I'm David Griffin. It's the 25th of October 2017 and I'm here at Derbyshire County Cricket Club and I'm talking to
Edward Wilkinson, born in May 1932.
Thank you, Edward. This is the second in a series of interviews that we've done with you, and we're going to pick up now at probably in the late 60s when you moved into Derbyshire itself, having been born in Nottinghamshire. So when was that, and where did you move to?
We moved, strangely enough, first of all to my employers, the worthy National Coal Board, to a rented house in Ashby de la Zouche, which our children thought the derelict garden was marvellous. I didn't, because I had to try and make something of it, but I was told to leave it as it was. The jungle was much more fun to play in. We were having a house built in Repton on Mill Hill, which was a new housing estate, and we lived there until I should think about 1972 or thereabouts, when I went to work for a National Coal Board subsidiary based in an Anglo-French company based in Sheffield, and we moved to Ashford-in-the-Water in 1970, and we've been there ever since.
So where did cricket, because you talked about in a previous interview the big bang when your hamstring went and that was the end of your playing career. Yeah. So what was your involvement in cricket as we moved into the 1970s and you've gone to live at Ashford?
Well, watching cricket then, and the firm I worked for were very keen to support cricket, both at Chesterfield and test matches.
Right.
And when I rose a little higher in the ranks, I got included in the test match parties, and I remember going to Lord's, Trent Bridge, to Edgbaston, seeing various games of which have become well known. Particularly, I remember Graham Gooch getting 300 at Lord's,
right.
And that was a fantastic day. I didn't join MCC in my working life because there was no point. The chairman of the company had a box at Lord's, right. And so there was no point in paying what one had to pay to become a member of the MCC until I retired. Then, of course, to become a full member, it takes 20 years.
Indeed, yeah.
Quite extraordinary. I don't think the MCC actually look after their associate members, because the associate members are the full members of the future.
Absolutely.
And I tried to get a rule that when you get to 80 and you're still an associate member, you're allowed in. But they said, no, that wasn't fair, because that means you jump the queue. Well, fortunately, I suppose, players have a special membership.
Yes.
And if they've achieved a certain standard and played for England, they can get in fairly easily. So can schoolmasters, who influence young people as well. Yeah. And now even women.
Indeed. And what about Derbyshire? Because obviously you're living in the heart of Derbyshire. Yeah. Ashford is renowned as one of the more beautiful cricket grounds.
Absolutely. I used to walk only a few yards, literally, to go and watch cricket at the weekend. But I was also, being a territorial soldier, didn't have all that much time. My daughter once wrote a letter to me and left it by my bedside. Dear Daddy, when are you coming to stay? But I needed the pay from being a territorial soldier, to keep the family going.
Were you involved with Ashford? Were you a part of the club, or are you just an occasional watcher?
I sponsored a ball, I think, or something of that sort. But just a bit later on, I remember when Dave Houghton was coach, he used to bring a team from County to Ashford.
Passing motorists still remember it.
I always offered a prize of, I think, a tenner to anybody that could hit a motorcyclist passing. But it's a pity it becomes more difficult. But does the county, or should the county, go around playing on Sunday? But there are so many different competitions now. Yeah. It's difficult. But I know that that got a great deal of support, and I think it was a great favour. And of course, being 12 miles from Chesterfield, and what a magnificent place to go and watch cricket.
So your connection with Derbyshire was you were back living in Derbyshire, but you're obviously very busy. But subsequently, I know if we fast forward into the 90s, you then become a part of the committee at Derbyshire. So how did that come about? You'd obviously re-entered the cricketing fold. And
yes, Guy Willett, who was of course another Reptonian of repute, a legend here, he said, "I'm getting old and tired." He said, "You have a go." And I think, well, I enjoyed it very much indeed. That time as a committee, we generally argued about what colour to paint the railings, not much about cricket, as you will remember.
Indeed.
There were one or two on the committee that irritated me beyond measure.
Well, it's interesting.
That's another story.
I was looking the other day in the club archive at some minutes from a committee meeting in the pre-war, so it'd be 1930 something, and the committee were discussing that they'd had complaints about where you could buy a scorecard on a match day, and it said that the committee proposed to put someone on the racecourse gate to make sure. And I thought, nothing changes, does it?
Changes,
80 years ago, the priority was still where can I get a scorecard and things like that.
And if you read the national press, the reports, they always say there was always problems within the committee. I think they were exaggerated, but they were good things for the press to write about. And it took some time for various chairmen to steady the ship and really concentrate on cricket. We had various changes of chief executive. They changed the name, I think, was it secretary?
Yeah. I've always said this, Edward, whenever people are critical of Derbyshire, or whenever people talk about internal strife or everything else, or we had to pick up the pieces, blah, 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 I always say, at the time if we're filming this club's been going for 147 years. So there must have been some people doing something right at some point during that time, or we wouldn't be here where we are today.
Absolutely.
And I don't think it's ever been as bad as people think, really. Trying times sometimes, but nonetheless.
One of the problems of Derbyshire, of course, is that Derby itself is a football city, and they get 30,000. If we get 3, we're delighted.
Yeah.
And cricket is followed in a different way to the masses that go to soccer.
Do you think if the club had made a decision years back to go out into the county, because of course in 1970 there was this option. In the 70s there was a lot of dispute over whether we didn't play here at all in 76, and there was talk about headquarters going to Chesterfield, Ilkeston even at one time. Do you think that would have made a difference, Edward, or was it always destined to stay in Derby?
No, I think being in the city, which became a city eventually in the 1970s, I think was the key. I mean, we used to play. I remember going to Buxton, going to Darley-Dale even. Yeah. I can still remember playing Hampshire there. I
was up at Darley-Dale the other day, and they were talking about that very game. Wonderful memories. Talking about Major Carr turning up, and the farmer who'd agreed to let his field for the car parking had doubled the amount of money he wanted. He doubled the price for parking and refused to unlock the gates. So that was it. So did you travelled around the county then? Obviously going to the
various things.
Other than Chesterfield, which would have been your favourite outground in Derbyshire then?
Burton-on-Trent.
Right, and more than one there, of course, because there was Town Ground and the Ironcoop Ground.
The Ironcoop Ground was a pretty good ground, good facilities, I seem to remember. Yeah. But I mean, there was Ilkeston, Heanor.
We played at Trent College. Of course, we famously played at Repton, although it rained in 1988. We played a game there.
Yes, I remember Devon Markham turning up. I think it was that particular game. Where's the pavilion?
Yeah, well, that tends to be the problem with outgrounds. What about away grounds? You've obviously talked about going to test grounds, and I mean, most people say Lords, I suppose. Yeah. Would that be your favourite ground?
Well, it was one of the advantages coming season is Middlesex, having been done out of 2 points.
Yes, they're in our division.
We're back to Lords, and to go in the committee room.
We only play 7 away games, don't forget, and there are 9 teams. so we could miss out. Sorry about that. Sorry to give you that bad news.
Oh, I've been looking for. I can go in anyway.
Absolutely.
But
what's special about Lords for you?
Oh, the atmosphere there, and of course, going to the committee room for lunch. I mean, lunch, like going to a French meeting, the most important thing of the day is lunch, and not the cricket particularly. But I enjoyed always going to Taunton. They were very hospitable at Taunton. And surprisingly, even at Leicester, you were well looked after by various people. I remember going to Northampton. The particular thing there was when Tom Poynton made his first 100.
That's right. And
batting with Wayne Manson. And I've even been to Edinburgh.
Rayburn Place,
and travelled around. I don't think I've been to Cardiff or Swansea, but Headingley, of course. And, I mean, there are always characters there. Like,
absolutely.
Dickie Bird is there forever.
And I'm sure I've seen you at Worcester.
I've been to Worcester. Well, I have a particular friend who at Worcester, and he has a cottage on the river in Ashford, so I bring him to games here or at Chesterfield, and he invites us to Worcester. But I used to go anyway as a committee member to Worcester. And I got into terrible trouble, and maybe you don't want this on record, but...
I don't mind, Edward. You're just thinking years to come, people will be watching this in 30 years' time when we're all gone, dead and buried.
I said that I bought a special present for Mo in Arley. Oh, how kind, they said. What is it? I said, a Wilkinson razor. And I said, if he'd shaved that Richard beard off, he'd be a very good-looking young man. And they said, you mustn't say things like that. It indicates his religion. And we've even got a prayer room for him in the pavilion. So anyway, of course, those days he was the average county player. And look what's happened to him. Absolutely incredible. I mean, that innings when he suddenly scored 100 in a one-day game was international. And I mean, he was a bowler who batted a bit.
I know. It's astonishing how some players do that, don't they? Yeah. They go up in the ranks and suddenly they produce performances
he's been given
beyond anything.
Chances, but his skill is there, and I always remember that. I've actually met him, and he is a very nice young man to talk to. There we go.
So 85 years on the planet, 70 years watching cricket.
Yes.
There must be some greats that you would kind of, if you had your time again, you'd want to see, whether it's a bowler in full flight or a batsman, whatever. Who would you say, who were your heroes? Who were the ones that you like to watch best of all?
Well, I remember people like Peter May and Colin Cowdrey. In fact, Colin Cowdrey particularly, because we spent our honeymoon in the next room down in Cornwall.
Oh, really?
Of all people, Colin eventually divorced Penny Cheeseman, and that was surprising. I did ask, I remember asking, I think it was Graham Cowdrey, what was your date of birth? And he said, what do you want to know that for? I said, well, your parents and us spent our honeymoon in the next room. We didn't see much of the Cowdreys. They seemed to have other things to do than socialise. But the date was his date of birth was some 2 years after the 15th of September 1956. So,
of the more modern players, I mean, May and Cowdrey clearly.
Well, I remember we were talking about Colin Milburn, and I remember him playing at Trent Bridge, coming against the Australians and hitting the ball right into the Trent Bridge Inn.
Really? Would that have been 68?
I should think so.
68
yes.
Australian tour.
Yes. And later, of course, our own Dominic Cork. I remember being at Lord's and everything was pretty quiet. Things weren't going too well.
Was this the West Indian game?
Yeah, I think so.
2002,
yeah,
I think.
Whatever.
Yeah.
And Dominic came into bat, and I suppose he was batting at 7 or 8 or something like that. And within half an hour, the whole ground was alight. But by the way he played.
Yeah.
He took them by the scruff of the neck when everybody else had been sort of fannying around.
Yeah. He was a proper match winner, wasn't he?
Yes, and he was fantastic, and as a bowler, of course. And Devon Markham, sadly it wasn't the occasion when he got nine wickets. Was it there that they said, well, he'd been hit on the head?
That's right, yeah.
And there was a mallet hanging in the changing room at Derby when they said, with a label on it saying, before Devon goes out to bat, hit him on the head. Yeah. But he was another great character, and still is, of course.
And if we come into the 21st century, obviously, not been as successful a period for Derbyshire, but nonetheless we had the 2012 championship winning side. That must have given you some pleasure to see young Wayne Madsen as the captain, and a team of largely sort of relative, you know, they're from local boys.
Well, I'm very keen on the Derbyshire players, and I think we should have given, for example, Harvey Hussain. Why did we bring in 2 other wicket-keepers? We got a perfectly good wicket-keeper, very good wicket-keeper. Look how he scored runs when he's taken his chances, and one hopes that we stick with him. Otherwise, he'll go to Trent Bridge. Or,
well, that 2012 side had got Poynton, it had got Paul Borrington, there was John Clare, Ross Whiteley. There were a lot of young local players, weren't there?
And Alex Hughes came in, and I remember his first game. I'm pretty sure it was a Sunday game up in Leek.
At Leek, absolutely, yeah.
And I think he got 60 on.
Yeah, runs and wickets. I think it was Essex we played. Yeah, he got man of the match.
And that was his start, and we've persevered with him, fortunately. Others haven't been as lucky with the number of chances they've got. Some have been not quite up to it, but I think we should concentrate on the young people particularly, and give them every opportunity, because that's where the future lies. And there are going to be rules coming in all the time to restrict overseas players. Those we've had, some have been good, some have been excellent, some have been not so good. Who
was your favourite of all the overseas that played at Derbyshire?
Well, I go back, our various South Africans.
Been a few good ones, haven't there?
We've had some good ones, yes. And they've set the scene for the future. I mean, your favourite one, of course.
Mr. Barlow, absolutely.
I mean, he was amazingly. And I remember particularly, I took to Peter Kirsten. I remember him playing in a game at Chesterfield in inevitable rain, and I happened to be in the pavilion, and there he was on a box halfway up the stairs, allegedly fast asleep. He still got his pads on his back by the side, and he was just concentrating on and waiting to get out again. And I thought he was a fantastic cricketer.
Absolutely.
And he would have played much more for South Africa if it wasn't for the apartheid time.
Well, it was a great side, potentially. Rice, Proctor, McEwen, I mean, the names are endless. Well, thanks again, Edward. We've got some other things to talk about, but I think for now we'll leave it there.
Thank you. Thank you very much.